Bonjour et bienvenue au petit déjeuner Tête à Papineau. Aujourd'hui, je juste vous dire à tout le monde que nous avons l'interprétation simultanée aujourd'hui. Si vous avez besoin de participer aux sessions en français, vous voulez juste prendre un écouteur et elles sont juste là. Before we continue, I would like to pause to acknowledge that we hold today's session on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. We acknowledge them as we travel on this journey of reconciliation. Now, for those joining us for the first time, the Partnership Group for Sciences and Engineering, who is putting on today's session, is a nonprofit organization that represents 20 or so national organizations and academic societies in the sciences and engineering. Formed in 1995, our mandate is to educate and inform federal parliamentarians, decision makers, and other leaders of the importance of Canadian research and innovation and the contributions that it makes. Through this speaker series especially, we bring researchers to speak to decision makers on a range of topics. And on that note, today's topic is ship travel in the Arctic. As we know, in today's geopolitical climate, we continue to hear a variety of countries express interest in the Arctic, whether as a passage or for resource exploration. As the climate change is creating more open access to Canada's north, today's speaker, Dr. Jackie Dawson, will shed light on what it means for our north and what is happening there. And so please note that after Dr. Dawson's remarks, we will have a moderated Q&A, and we encourage questions from members of the media or MPs and senators who are present first, as you might have other commitments that you need to get to. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Dawson.
Thank you. Welcome, bienvenue ou l'écoute. I'm Jackie, bonjour à tous.
Hello everyone.
Merci de votre présence ici aujourd'hui.
Thank you for being here today.
C'est un honneur d'être parlé avec vous ici.
To be here with you today.
My French comprehension is quite good, but not perfect. But if you do want to ask questions in French, then that's fine. This is a topic I've been studying for a long time. I realized the other day that we've been traveling back and forth to Pond Inlet for over 20 years. And I never thought I would be studying ships. It's not what I grew up thinking about. But actually, it's a really, really, really important industry, as many people here know. 90% of everything that you're touching, you're eating right now, has arrived here by ship. It's an industry that is often invisible, but is absolutely essential to our sort of modern way of being and our very historical and cultural roots of our country came by ship. So we are absolutely a maritime nation, and so now that we're starting to realize that the Arctic is our front yard and not our backyard, I'm happy to see that we're paying a lot more attention to this region. It's fundamental for climate regulation globally. It's fundamental for our country, and perhaps most importantly, it's the homeland and the settled land claim areas of Inuit and Inuit people who have been living there for much longer and have a lot at stake as things change. So you told me this was going to be finicky, but that's okay. Got it. I'll get it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about climate change, what's going on in the Arctic. I'll talk about the patterns that we're seeing, maybe some not surprising, maybe some will be surprising. And I want to talk a little bit about community concerns, because we work very closely with community partners when we're doing all of our work in the north. And a few concluding thoughts, some of my thoughts. So one thing that I think is worth starting out by saying, I think most people have probably, if you know anything about the Arctic, you've heard the fact the Arctic is warming at 4 times the rate of the global average. So this is significant. There are many reasons for that, albedo effect, et cetera. But one thing that we have to think about is, are we going to hit our Paris Agreement targets? Because if we hit them, then we'll probably continue warming at 4 times the rate of the global average. But actually, if you look at the nationally determined contributions, so those are the contributions that every country pledges to the Conference of the Parties and saying how are we going to reduce our emissions, we think we've calculated that we're actually going to hit 2.7 degrees. And in fact, we're already at 1.1 right now. So if we are looking at a 2.7 degree world, and that's the world we should be looking at, because that's the world, even if we all, every single country in the world, even if we all hit our targets, we're going to be at 2.7. Now, if the Arctic is warming at 4 times that rate, this is a double-digit warming in the Arctic. So this is a rapid warming, something we've never seen in the past. And I know that people get tired of these alarmist statements, but as scientists, we have to keep saying them because it's happening even quicker than we thought it was years ago. So that's what I want to start by putting in your head, is that we are not looking at a 1.5 degree world. We're looking at a 2.7 and likely 3.2. So in the Arctic, which I'm obsessed with, one of the big things we're seeing is reduction in sea ice, extent, concentration, et cetera. And so some really interesting things are happening. If you look at the top right, this is the sea ice in the Canadian Arctic archipelago. We're consistently breaking records for the lowest sea extent. Usually we look at it in September. So last year in 2024, it was clear sailing, and I'm going to show you some more examples of that later. But interestingly, this year in 2025, and we're not quite finished yet, it was a very, very, very icy season. So the Northwest Passage was very much choked up with ice this year. So there's extreme variability right now, and that is because of climate change, and I'll explain why we're seeing that. But what we're seeing so far is that every decade, we see almost a 20-day increase in open water season in the Northwest Passage area. So that's quite significant when we're talking about the future of maritime trade through that region, which continues to be debated. So there's some major trade routes through the Arctic. The one that, of course, is closest to home is the Northwest Passage. Well, let's go back. Thank you. The one closest to home is the Northwest Passage, which the passages. There are multiple passages through that region. And then there's the Northeast Passage, which goes along the coast of Russia. That passage is fairly open when it comes to ice. And then the transpolar route, which you can't see on here because it's not a route that we used to think was very feasible at all, but it goes right over the top and through the ice pack. That's a route that's also being looked at, and probably is the most economically exciting route for people. It's not something we thought we would see, but it is, I think we will, because we're thinking sometime around 2050, we're likely to see the ice, multi-year ice in the summer to be gone, which hasn't happened since in 130,000 years. So this is before, before the Holocene. So this is significant changes. So not surprising, we are already seeing a massive increase in ship traffic. As a result, we did some statistical analysis, and you can correlate sea ice reduction with ship traffic increases. It's statistically significant. So we do know that when we see reduction in ice, we will see an increase in traffic. So we expect this increase to continue. The majority of traffic is in the European Arctic. There's a lot more. There's a lot more population, and importantly, there's infrastructure. The Canadian Arctic is completely lacking infrastructure to support what's coming. It's something that we need to be paying attention to now because of how long it takes to build. And I know we are, which is exciting. I'm excited to open the newspaper and to read about the nation-building projects that are potentially on the horizon. So one thing you might ask is, okay, we've got more traffic. Are we seeing more accidents? And I actually did some of this work with someone in the audience, Jerome here. And actually, interestingly, we're seeing a massive increase in traffic and a decrease in accidents, which is good news. The accidents rates overall are going down, which was surprising, and there's certain areas that are more dangerous than others. Now, here's the sort of bad or worse news. In Canada, that's not the case. So the red here shows you Canada. Our accident rate is actually going up comparative to with traffic. One of the reasons is lack of infrastructure, lack of charting, poor digital charts. But to the credit of Canadian Hydrographic Service and others, this is a big ask. There's not a lot of economic activity, so investing in major infrastructure just hasn't made sense historically. But as we move forward, I think it's something that we'll need to look at. Something else that's really important to point out is it's non-commercial vessels, for the most part, that we see having accidents. So it's yachts, it's adventure ships. Now, we did just see a ship grounding. These things get a lot of media attention. I'll talk about it in a minute. But actually, those are the more rare accidents and incidents, but we hear about them more often. The main cause, it varies. Could be, groundings are a big one, ice interaction, fire on board, anything like that. I would argue we're lucky. So far, we've been lucky. And if you read some of the articles about the grounding of I think it's called the Thames Warg, we're just lucky so far. We've had several groundings. We've had, no major environmental incidents, no major fatalities, but I would say it's coming. Okay, so if I was talking to my students, I'd say, don't put a slide like that up. So sorry, just ignore it, but what I want, my point here is to say that one of the things that we've been working on is converting sea ice charts into risk maps. And so we do this using the International Maritime Organization's Polar Code, Polaris calculations. So scientifically speaking, we often, no offense to us, but we're often shooting, darts in the dark a little bit when we're creating models or when we're creating our algorithms to try to project and understand risk and future traffic change and things like this. But what I like about this method is we've taken a regulatory mechanism. So this is what ship operators, if they're captaining their ship, this is what they see go on their screen that says whether they can go into the ice or cannot go into the ice. So what I like about this is it really localizes and makes the science real on the ground. So we're not guessing here, although there's some limitations that I won't go into, but in any case, what we've done is we've converted the sea ice charts from around the entire global Arctic into what are called ship navigability maps, risk maps. And they tell us, and they tell ship captains, if you can go into a certain area of ice or if you cannot go. Is it safe or is it not safe? And so then what we do is we overlay all of the ship traffic data. So it's a massive amount of satellite-based data that we have, where we know where all the ships are in the global Arctic. And we overlay them, and we can see where the ships have gone, where it's really risky, and where they're operating in normal water. And this, when you do an analysis like this, you can find some spatial hotspots on where you might want to invest infrastructure, services, et cetera. For me, I find it interesting just statistically and from a risk perspective, but it's also got decision-making utility. The story here again, which is really nice, is that we're seeing an increased amount of traffic across the global Arctic, but we're actually seeing a decrease in risk-taking from ship operators, which is good. You could say that that's operational, but actually partly it's the ice. The ice is just changed. It's maybe not there. But I'm gonna reverse course on that statement in a minute when I show you the next slides. You can see where the risk-taking is. It's mostly around the Russian Arctic. That's tankers. Thank you. A little bit in the central Arctic Ocean and around Svalbard, that'll be fishing vessels. And if you see the red dots, so the red dots are the ships taking, that are in high-risk situations. In Canada, it's yachts. So in the Northwest Passage, that'll be mostly yachts. So in Canada, our traffic, so we'll switch now to Canada, and then we're going to go to the Northwest Passage, which is the most exciting part, I think. So in Canada, we are seeing an increase in traffic. So the red lines here is where we see the most increase. So it's not incredibly surprising. We're seeing increases through the Hudson Strait. That's where we see a lot of pressured ice, though, so that's concerning. And then we see a lot of increases through the southern route of the Northwest Passage. So and Pond Inlet is by far the community. Pond Inlet's at the northern tip of Baffin Island. Sorry, my pointer isn't working, but it's at the northern tip of that big, beautiful island beside Greenland, and they're at the entrance to the Northwest Passage, and they're by far seeing the most amount of traffic, and that's where we do most of our work. And you can see the orange line there. That is kilometers traveled. Or total voyages. So there's a big difference between the number of ships and the number of kilometers these ships travel in terms of risk. And the same ships are now traveling 4 or 5 times as much as before. So we're having, in terms of risk profile, even with a slight increase in ships, you've got a lot of increase in activity. And not all ships are the same. So some ships are ice strengthened, and some ships are not. So the yachts have no ice strengthening. So that'll be one of the reasons that they are, more risky than others. So you go from the bottom, which is, I think this is the Octopus, which is Paul Allen's yacht, Microsoft. That's come to the Arctic several times. And then you give a PC7 in the middle, so that's kind of a medium ice strengthened vessel. That'll be your cargo ships, anything resupplying the communities, all the way to the top, which are PC3s usually, which are our icebreakers. And something I think is really interesting to note is over time in Canadian Arctic waters, we've got a decrease in the high strengthened vessels, and an increase, significant increase in low or no ice strengthened vessels. So what we've got is, basically an increased risk profile going on. It's also, if I can, it's also a reason why we need to build more icebreakers for Canada. And there's lots of reasons for that. So in terms of the future, we've done some modeling. I love working with the Climate Research Division at Environment Climate Change Canada. So we take a lot of our work and we try to project it into the future. We try to make guesses about how the Northwest Passage may evolve in the future, which is what a lot of us are wondering. And what we did when we ran the models is we found that the Northwest Passage, by 4 degrees, I'll just talk, oh yeah, okay, we're back. By 4 degrees warming, or maybe 2050, we've found that the Northwest Passage may only open by about 2 weeks to a month, which seemed weird, because in the past, you may remember that fact from the beginning, that we were seeing the passage open by almost 20 days every decade. So what's going on? So we asked ourselves this question. We were finding that the ice it's not going away in the Northwest Passage. So we started to look at travel through the region. We're still seeing increases in transits through the Northwest Passage, especially the southern route. So the green and to the red, that's the southern route of the Northwest Passage. Most of the time, ships will deke through Bellot Strait, which is that little wee area. And actually, down there is Franklin Strait, which is where the ship is currently grounded. And the northern route is the red to yellow and then to the blue. So what we found is there's all these choke points. So if you want a route to be open, the entire route has to be open, not just parts of the route. So what we were realizing when we really looked closely at the ice and you looked at the mobility patterns of the ice is that there are certain regions where the length of the season length is actually getting shorter. So you'll often read in the news, oh, it's opening up, everything's open. Actually, it is in the Beaufort, it is in Hudson Bay, it often is in Baffin Bay. But there are certain regions through the Northwest Passage where the season length is much shorter. And that's because the ice is choking up these areas. So it's much like this. So we used to have what we see on the left, nice multi-year sea ice. Now it's breaking up. It's breaking up even more. We have extreme wind events. It's coming down and choking up the Northwest Passage. We used to have these nice, beautiful ice islands. Those ice islands are breaking up because of climate change. And then they're floating down into the Northwest Passage. So this took us a while to figure out because we were not seeing statistically significant reductions in sea ice in the Northwest Passage like we were seeing in other places. So these circles here are where we have discovered the choke points, consistent choke points. And some of them are exactly similar or close to where we've seen groundings, because these choke points will force the ships off the regular corridor and into areas that are very, very poorly charted. So all of these things are connected. So this lower choke point at the bottom here is, I think, almost exactly where the ship is currently grounded right now. Now, you may remember earlier I said 2024 was really interesting. It was like smooth sailing, no ice. It was actually bad for tourism because they like to find ice. They like to find icebergs and polar bears and things. And there wasn't any. Now this year, though, there were tons of choke points. So we were like, oh no, our theory's wrong. There were no choke points last year, but they're back this year. And basically, when you look at, if you look at the right, this is the climatology. This is 2024. It's all red, so very few choke points. And then if we go to 2025, it's a lot of blue, so tons of choke points. So we can do this every year and look at and see how things are changing. The problem is that the Thamesburg probably planned their voyage at least a year ago when it was open. So what we're seeing is a ton of variability. So we're not smooth sailing just yet, but we will be at some point. And the other thing I want to say about the Northwest Passage is it's not just about ice. It's also, of course, about geopolitics. It's about economics. It's about current global trends. So the trends being, we used to think, okay, the Northeast Passage along Russia, that's going to be the route. That's a nice, easy, ice-free route. Probably not going to be a good trade route now for the next decade or more. Also, what's going on in the southern routes, in the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, we see major drought. So we saw fewer and fewer ships able to go through there. And we're also seeing political unrest. So there are a lot of factors that are going to push ships and international economic trade to the Northwest Passage that are not ice. And also technological innovations in ship design. I'm a big fan of Davy Shipbuilding. They're doing amazing things with Finnish innovation, Canadian-Finnish partnerships. I think we're going to see trade through the Northwest Passage sooner than a lot of people think. Now, combine that with the fact that our risk profile is higher, I think we better be ready. Now, the last point I want to talk about is communities. There are many people that live here and have for a long time, friends and colleagues. And they're concerned. So these are some colleagues from Pond Inlet, where we're seeing the highest amount of traffic. They're worried about the traffic coming through. They're worried about iron ore dust coming off the ships and landing in their freshwater lakes, which they get fresh water from. So we try to work really closely with them, and we respond to their questions, and we try to work together. And we work with Inuit youth there, so we've worked with about 60 different youth across that community and region. One of the things we've done is we've tried to map culturally significant marine areas, which You know, it's amazing, the ship operators, when you talk to them, they don't want to disturb bowhead whale hunts. They don't want to impact narwhal, but they are. So we need to do the science, we need to work with communities, and we need to share this information so that we can do the best we can. Because development is happening. We're gonna see this increase, but I would like to see it done in a self-determined way that considers and mitigates as much risk as possible. Other things that we've been looking at that communities are worried about are ships source underwater noise. So we can model the noise profile of the ships. And then we can compare that against local observations of marine mammals, because different marine mammals are affected by different noise levels, and this is the beauty of science. And we know that a narwhal is more impacted than, say, a bowhead by noise. We know the decibel levels, so we can model them and understand what the impacts may be. Interestingly, we're now seeing orca whales around Pond Inlet, which are forcing the narwhals also into different regions. So I've got a friend in Pangertung who is now hunting narwhal and said, you know, they never hunted narwhal when he was growing up. Plastics, we're seeing a lot of ship paint. We paint the bottom of ships with anti-fouling paint to make sure invasive species don't come in. Well, we're actually now finding that paint in the sediment of these places. So we don't know yet how that'll bioaccumulate through the benthic ecosystem. We also, with our friends in Pond Inlet, we've been scraping the bottom of ships for invasive species, and we've been taking water samples, and this past summer, we actually found a bay barnacle for the first time. Now, it's not gonna propagate, don't worry. Don't write any horror stories about invasive species being in the Arctic, they're not there. But we are seeing species we've never seen before, including a bay barnacle, which is fairly benign, but we are worried about the introduction. So that's done through eDNA. So we need to continue doing that kind of work so that we can see these changes as we move into the future. So that's, I mean, I could talk forever, just ask my wife, but that's all I have now, and we can do some Q&As if you want, but basic concluding thoughts are the Arctic is warming way faster than we think. Maybe double digits when we move into the future. The ice dynamics in Arctic Canada are creating navigational risks, especially in the Northwest Passage, where we're seeing actually a shortening of that passage right now. We'll see a lengthening, but right now it's shortening. Regardless of climate change, I think Arctic shipping and economic trade through that region, it's coming, and it's not necessarily just because of ice. It's other regions, and yeah, we need investments in infrastructure, attention. The Arctic is our front yard. It's 40% of our country, 78% of our coastline. It depends how you do the math. We've got a lot of islands up there. But it's a really important region, and we can do it. We haven't overbuilt. We haven't done anything crazy. We can do it the right way. So now's the time. And thanks for your time.